Welcome to Royal Dish. I'm Kay Quinn.
And I'm Brandie Piper. Our last two episodes focused on single topics. So last week we had Princess Diana. The week before that we talked about the time Fergie visited St. Louis. We're back this week to give you our American perspective on some of the recent royal headlines and hopefully teach you something along the way.
Yeah, so before we get started, Brandie, we just want to remind everybody listening to please subscribe to Royal Dish. We don't want you to miss an episode. And also, it would be great if you could leave us a review. By the way, nobody's left a review yet, so you might be the first. And we'd love to hear from you, honestly, either positive or negative feedback. We just want to hear from you and know what's on your mind.
You know, we love to connect with people in our hometown of St. Louis, Missouri, who share our passion for all things royal. So joining us today on Royal Dish is Lauren Keena. Welcome.
Great to have you, Lauren.
Great to be here.
So we're so excited to have you because you're the writer and editor of a blog called The Court Jeweler.
That's right.
And many of our listeners may know you by the pseudonym you use there, which is Ella Kay. So talk about that. How did you come to use that name? And how did you come to start the blog?
Well, I've been interested in royalty for a long time. I studied abroad in London when I was in college and, got to see a lot of the palaces and got to see the Queen during the state opening of Parliament. And I've always loved jewelry too, and especially all of the sort of grand jewelry that royals wear. So this was always sort of a side interest of mine. And then about 5 years ago, I was teaching at the University of Kansas in the English department, and I didn't have enough work to do. So I decided to start a hobby and write a blog about royal jewelry, just, to sort of see who would be interested in reading. And it turned out a lot of people were interested. But since I was teaching, I didn't want to use my real name. I wanted to sort of keep it separate from that part of my life at that point. So I was looking for a pseudonym. I was trying to decide what would work, and my initials are LK, so Ella K came from that. But since I've started doing the blog full time, I've put my real name on it now, so people kind of know me as both.
As both. Okay,
Yeah.
well, so you and Brandie have a lot in common because Brandie did a semester abroad in England.
Yes.
I did, yeah.
Wasn't it great?
Oh, it was amazing. It changed my life. I was in Canterbury, though, so I was about an hour outside of London, so a
Yes,
very
Ben.
different experience.
Yeah, it's sort of quiet and nice in Canterbury. It's beautiful
So
there.
what drew you to go to London in college anyway? What was it about the whole city that attracted you?
So I grew up in the St. Louis area, a little town called Steelville in Randolph County, Illinois. And my high school history teacher used to take students on trips to Europe in the summers. So when I think I was a junior in high school, we took a trip to Paris and London, and I fell completely in love with it. So from that point on, it was a mission, how do I get back? So when I went to Notre Dame for undergrad, and I got there, and I remember during orientation weekend, they were talking about their study abroad programs, and they have a program, a dedicated building in London where people can go and study, and that was my mission for the next 2 years. I was going to get to go to the London program, and I did, and it was amazing and just a wonderful experience.
That is awesome. So did you spend a lot of time with the royal jewels when you were in London? Was that was it something you were already thinking about?
Well, I definitely remember going to the Tower of London and seeing the crown jewels while I was there. But I think the thing that really got me interested in jewelry while I was in London was the Victoria and Albert Museum.
Oh,
if you've ever been there. It's the Art and Design Museum in London. It's free, which was key because I was a broke college student. So I would go there, and sit in the jewelry galleries, and they have amazing pieces of jewelry on display. A lot of really old pieces of jewelry, and I just was hooked completely. So
Now, your blog doesn't just focus on British royal jewels, though, right?
Ooh.
It's royal families around the world. So how did
is.
you become such an expert in this?
I think some of it was just my own personal interest. I love these things and I wanted to know more about them. And I've always loved history. So it's pieces that have a story behind them that I've always been most drawn to. So just reading a lot, gazing at lots of pictures of these amazing jewels. And it just built up over time, I think, as an interest.
What kind of reaction do you get to your blog, and are there a lot of other people like you who have this fascination with royal jewels?
It turns out there are. I wasn't sure. I started the blog. I figured my mom would read it, and she still does, which is nice. But the really surprising thing to me, I think, has been the number of people that I have met in real life who find out what I do and go, I read your blog. Wow. Oh my gosh, that's you. I mean, it's happened multiple times, especially over the past several years. So, there's definitely an audience there. I've so enjoyed the group of dedicated readers that I have who come back every single day to read and comment at the blog. It's been really wonderful to connect with that community.
And they're not just all from St. Louis, I would guess. They're from all over the world?
They are from all over the world.
Wow.
A lot of them are American. A lot of Americans are interested in this. A lot of people from the UK and the Commonwealth, but people from across the world definitely read, it's fun. It's fun to look at the analytics of the blog and see the readers pop up on the globe real time and find out, someone's reading in Australia, someone's reading in Japan. It's really fun.
That is so cool.
Do you ever see a piece of jewelry on someone and just don't know much about it? Like, how do you identify those obscure pieces or the new pieces?
It's easier for me to identify the new pieces at this point just because there's sort of I don't know what that is kind of reaction that I have when I see it. So when I have that gut reaction, I think, okay, probably it's something new. Not always. The Queen went to church near Balmoral on Sunday, and she wore a brooch, and I pulled up the picture and I went, what is that? I've never seen this. And it turns out she's had it since 1947.
Wow.
She just doesn't wear it very often. It was one of her wedding presents that doesn't get trotted out quite as much as some of the more famous pieces. So, every once in a while, those are the fun moments when it's either something that you don't know anything about and you get to discover it for the first time, or something that you haven't seen in decades that pops back up. So.
I bet, do you have a real understanding of sort of the cultural or the social implications of the jewelry they're wearing? Because I have to think back to, I'm thinking World War II. Mm-hmm. They probably didn't flaunt a lot of jewels at that time, right?
No.
Or the Depression, or
yes.
what economic, downturns.
It is a really interesting situational thing. Some royals, especially during things like the Second World War, where they were losing their thrones, becoming exiled, hanging on to these jewels as kind of an insurance policy. There's a famous story where the Crown Princess of Norway was fleeing the country in the 1940s with her children. And her mother, who was a Swedish princess, handed her at a train station this remarkable set of emerald jewelry that came from the Napoleonic era. And she said, take it with you to America. You might need it. We don't know what's going to happen. You can always sell these things. So they would use them as currency. They would sort of hide them away sometimes. There are still jewels in bank vaults in Europe that haven't been seen since before the Second World War. But then you also had people like the Queen Mum, who had this philosophy in the middle of the Blitz, where she said, if I am going to go to visit the people who have been bombed, I'm going to dress up. They would do it for me. Wow. I want to show them how important they are to me. So she would wear a lot of, beautiful brooches and things to go and tour munitions factories and bombed sections of London. So it's a really interesting gamut, the way that people deal with a topic like jewelry. Mm-hmm.
That's so fascinating.
Really
the Queen Mum was, I think, a really interesting character or personality, but I kind of get that approach. It kind of gives you hope that things are, somewhere hidden away amongst all this destruction, life still's going on, and there's hope that that's going to happen again, right?
And I've heard that from people, even in today's world where, we turn on the news and a lot of it is really troubling. A lot of it is really difficult to read. And I've heard from people that one of the reasons that they love my blog is that they're guaranteed something beautiful to look at every morning. And I think that's a really nice thing to be able to provide people today.
Mm-hmm. It really is.
I love that.
Where do you see royal jewels going in the future? Do you think that, I just look at the economy. I look at, so Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have this, real conservation streak. And let's face it, mining a lot of these gems is expensive and not really, ecologically very good. So do you see that as impacting jewelry in the future?
I think so. There has been a trend over the past 20 or 25 years to sort of make diplomacy a little more casual in Europe. Lots of countries don't hold these grand state banquets anymore for state visits. France famously went to a business casual dress code for their state dinners a couple of decades ago. So there are still, royal families like the Brits who still do have these sort of grand banquet occasions, but there are fewer and fewer and fewer where we see the kind of grand jewels from 100 years ago worn on a regular basis. So you'll see, today if an aristocrat passes away, the Duke of Fife died 5 years ago, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. And last year, as a part of the settlement of his estate, Kensington Palace was able to put some of the grand jewelry that belonged to that family on display to the public. And I think you're seeing more and more and more of that, the jewels being not retained for use for the next generation, but sort of put on display as art pieces for people to enjoy.
All right, so we've been waiting to ask you your 3 favorite pieces of all time. And let's start, in descending order, reverse order. So start 3, 2, 1.
I thought about this question so long. My husband heard about so many pieces of jewelry over dinner last night. So should I talk about this one? What do you think? So I came up with 3, and I think these reflect definitely my love for the story behind the piece of jewelry. They're not necessarily the ones that I would want to wear. I'm not sure I would want to wear a lot of these, big, fantastic jewels from the past, just because I don't know if I could carry them off, but the story is fascinating. So I think the third one, we'll go descending order then. So number 3 is the Queen's engagement ring and her wedding bracelet.
Wow.
So there's of course a story behind both of these. Prince Philip was a Greek prince before he married into the British royal family. His mother was a granddaughter of Queen Victoria, and she was very well connected with a lot of the royal families in Europe. And when she got married in 1903, she received this fantastic suite of aquamarine and diamond jewelry from her aunt and uncle, who happened to be Nicholas and Alexandra, the last emperor and empress of Russia, who famously were murdered later on. So she kept the jewelry. She wore it a lot in early portraits. But after the Greek royal family went into exile and after she dealt with a lot of complicated health problems, she wasn't really using these jewels anymore. So they were in a bank vault somewhere. And when Prince Philip proposed to Princess Elizabeth, he didn't have a lot of money to buy her fantastic new jewelry. He was, a naval officer. He was not a sovereign prince of somewhere. So his mother went to the bank and took out the tiara and gave it to him and said, use the diamonds, make something for your wife out of these. So her engagement ring is set with the diamonds that came from that Romanov tiara.
Oh, wow.
And Philip also used the diamonds to make this fantastic sort of Art Deco, almost mid-century modern diamond bracelet for her. And the person who wears that now is the Duchess of Cambridge. So she has passed that along to William's wife. It's very rare to see her give sort of the sentimental pieces of jewelry as a loan to the next generation. So I've always seen that as sort of a little, you're doing well, Kate, kind of thing from the Queen.
That's amazing.
I love that story.
Yeah. So that's probably number 3.
Okay, number 2.
Number 2 is a sad story about a fascinating tiara. Comes from Prince Philip's family again. Did you two both watch The Crown? I'm guessing. Yeah. Remember the plane crash, the sad plane crash that killed Prince Philip's sister? Mm-hmm. So she was she married into one of the German royal families. All of his sisters did. And her family was the Hesse family. And the family had this fantastic tiara that it's made of turquoises and moonstones. Mm. And it looks like ribbons wrapped around a tiara. It is a fantastic piece of jewelry. So the reason they were on this plane in 1937 was to go to a family wedding. Her brother-in-law, Prince Ludwig, was getting married in London to the daughter of a British aristocrat. Prince Philip was coming from school to go to the wedding, so they were all going to convene in London. But Cecile's plane crashed along the way in Belgium, killing everybody on board, her entire family. And the tiara was on the plane because it was supposed to be a wedding present to her new sister-in-law, Peg. And the tiara made it. Everyone else perished on the plane, but the tiara was in a strong box on the plane, and it made it to England. And now the tiara is worn by a woman named Baroness Geddes, who was a niece of the bride at that wedding. Oh. So occasionally when you're watching the state opening of Parliament and they pan over to all of the spouses sitting in the sort of, chairs
family
on the
section.
side. I'm trying to think what you would call that section. Family section. Gallery, that's what it's called. Thank you. You will see Baroness Geddes wearing that tiara.
Wow.
You can occasionally spot it. So, no one would think, it's a beautiful piece, but oh my goodness, the things that thing has seen.
That's an incredible story.
I know.
All right, so we're all waiting for your favorite.
Okay.
Absolutely.
How do you top that?
Number one, I think I can top it. I think I can do it. Is called the Vladimir Tiara, which you will probably be familiar with, maybe not the name, but you would recognize it. The Queen wears it a lot. It's that one that looks like diamond circles that has the pearls that are set in the circles. So the tiara wasn't originally British. It was originally Russian. It belonged to a woman named Grand Duchess Vladimir, who was the aunt of the last emperor of Russia and hosted this sort of fantastic kind of alternate imperial court in St. Petersburg with her husband. She had a grand palace, the Vladimir Palace, in St. Petersburg. And when the Russian Revolution came, she was able to escape. She went into house arrest and eventually got out to France. But she had to leave all of her jewelry behind, which was a common story with the Romanovs. But like we were saying, you go into exile, you need money. And a lot of these royals don't have a dedicated source of income once they're knocked off their thrones. So her family really wanted to get this jewelry back so that they could sell it to support their lifestyles. So her husband was dead. Her son, Grand Duke Boris, had a friend who was an art dealer and a British diplomat. His name was Bertie Stopford. Boris and Bertie managed to get back into Russia. They dressed up as workmen. They snuck into the Vladimir Palace, and they smuggled all the jewelry out.
Oh, my goodness.
They put it in plain brown bags. They're called Gladstone bags, and smuggled them out and got. So the tiara made its way back into Europe, made its way back to the family, and they ended up selling it. Grand Duchess Vladimir died. Her daughter ended up selling the tiara, and the woman who bought it was Queen Mary, who was one of the biggest purchasers of all of these Romanov jewels on the market later. It was in pretty bad shape. Some of the diamonds had been knocked off, and it needed to be refurbished. So she sent it to Gerard, the court jeweler, had them redo it, had it arranged so that she could wear it with her family emeralds as well, the Cambridge emeralds. So you'll still see the Queen wear it that way today. So she inherited the tiara from her grandmother in 1953, along with a lot of the rest of her jewelry. And now it's become one of the most iconic tiaras in Britain, also reproduced for the crown. So
that is spectacular. What a story.
It's easy to get addicted to these things.
Yes,
it's such a wonderful way to talk about history in a way that people don't often do it. So often it's just, learn the dates, learn the wars, learn the presidents, that sort of thing. And using jewelry as a tool to talk about history not only gives you something beautiful to look at while you do it, it's also a very female-centric way to talk about history that often we don't get to do. So I really enjoy it, obviously.
Yeah, and it is its own art form.
It is.
It's amazing.
It is.
Well, Lauren Keena, thank you so much for being here. This has been so exciting for us to have you, and we want to say that you'll be able to find a link to your blog and photos of all of these items you've just talked about on our website, which is ksdk.com. Yes. So we'll put it all in one place, and we just can't thank you enough for just a great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
We have to revisit a topic that's died down a little bit, Brandie, but was so hot a week or two ago. And it's this whole idea about the royal family's travels and really how they've been traveling. So we'll take you back in time to when Prince Harry and Meghan Markle and baby Archie were jet-setting all around Europe. They were on a vacation.
Yeah.
They were taking private planes everywhere, like 4 or 5 of them. And there was a lot of backlash.
There really was. And I think the reason for the backlash comes from Prince Harry's trip to Google Camp, which happened right before these vacations, where he made this speech about climate change and how everyone needs to do their part to help save the environment. And then just a few days after that, he and Meghan took a private jet to Spain, and then they came back again on the private jet, and then they went to Nice, and again taking a private jet. So they took 4 trips in 11 days, and people were kind of like, wait a second, you're talking about saving the environment and you're taking all of these private jets when you could have flown commercial and at least saved the environment, just that little bit by carpooling, essentially.
Yeah. And what was interesting were all the celebrities that came to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's defense. And remember, we have to kind of frame it within this, what you were talking about, Prince Harry being such a voice for conservation. He did the interview with Jane Goodall, and they were talking about how they may limit the size of their family to try to do their part to save the earth. I mean, they sound so committed to this cause of conservation and saving the earth. And then, it just, like their actions didn't seem to mesh with the message they were speaking. So I thought the backlash was sort of minor then, but then what really brought it to a head was when the Cambridges all started flying on budget airlines to go to Scotland.
Right, £73 per ticket, so like super cheap to fly up to Balmoral to visit the Queen. And I was thinking about it, and a lot of people took it as kind of like a slight at the Cambridge or at the Sussexes because they took the entire family and they didn't have any issues. First of all, if they would have taken a private jet, they would have been criticized for that. They couldn't have won either way. People were always going to read more into it. This trip could have been planned for months. We don't know.
Right.
I think people expect the royal family to probably take private jets, occasionally here and there. But it's that whole piece where you're talking about saving the environment and then you're not doing this one thing that would be pretty easy to do.
Yeah, days later.
It
wasn't like it was separated by a year or two. And I think what spoke volumes about this whole thing was that the Cambridges did have the ability to get on and off the plane separate from everybody else. So clearly there was security or whatever you want to call it, convenience taken in mind there. But it just showed how here's a couple with 3 kids who are some of the most recognizable people in the world. And it's possible to do this without feeling like somehow there's some big security threat. You know what I mean? Like, I think that was what spoke to me the most. It was all those unspoken things about what they did.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people who were defending the Sussexes said, they couldn't fly commercially because of the security issue. But there were passengers on that airplane with the Cambridges who didn't even know that they were on there until they got off and then saw them walking across the tarmac. And then they were taking pictures through the window. So yeah, you're right. It's totally doable. You just have to plan accordingly. But then a few days after that, it came out that airline had sent an empty jet. Once they knew that the Cambridges were going to fly their airline, they sent an empty jet to come pick them up. They didn't ask for it, but they just kind of switched out airplanes so that they would have their branding on it when the plane arrived.
I didn't see that.
Yeah. Regardless of what the reasoning behind them taking the commercial airline was, it kind of negated the environmental impact. And so then people were complaining to the airline about that. And they said, this was a decision made behind the scenes. They didn't ask for it. This is just what we decided to do. But
right. For marketing purposes.
Right.
We wanted to have our name all over this. Wow. Well, the other thing that I thought was really interesting was the celebrities who came out in support of the Sussexes. So we're talking Elton John, and even you saw a tweet from Pink.
Yeah.
I wonder why they felt they had to come to their defense, because usually we don't see things like that. Do you agree?
Yeah, I was shocked. I was on Twitter and saw somebody retweet Elton John. I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? And then I open it up and it's not just one tweet. It's a thread of, 6 or 7 of them kind of explaining, well, I sent the jet to them. They were my guests at my villa. But people were saying it doesn't matter who paid for it. That's not the question here. It's the environmental impacts that it had by doing it.
And remember, then he said something about, well, I also made a donation
to
help, preserve the environment. It just seemed like a lot of explaining where explaining wasn't necessary.
Right. And especially the story had started to die down. So it kind of broke over the weekend and people were talking about it. And then his tweets didn't come until like Monday or Tuesday. And I was like, whoa, I thought we were over this. I kind of forgot about it already. And now he's bringing it back up. But then it just kind of continued throughout the week. A day went by and then Ellen DeGeneres made a statement on Twitter. I had no idea they were friends.
Me neither.
That's interesting. And then, another day goes by and then you have Pink making a statement. And then another day goes by and then it was Jamil, who is
a very
good
friend
of
of
Meghan's.
Meghan, right.
Yeah, so it was just like the trickling effect. They were keeping this negative story in the headlines when it would have died on its own like a week earlier.
Well, it makes me wonder if Meghan called these celebrities and said, I need you to help me, or if they just did it on their own. I would love to know the background on that.
Yeah.
It seems to me, I don't think they would do it without checking with her, right?
I mean, at least for the close friends, you would think they wouldn't want to speak without having the approval.
And then why she would feel like, yes, go ahead and send out something. I have to tell you, I think Buckingham Palace's policy of just not addressing these things really is the best policy. Just let it blow over, let people say what they will and move on. And maybe that's hard for Meghan because she does come from the celebrity culture and not the royal culture. But I sure think adopting a little bit more of that might be better than all of what really went on with this.
Yeah, I'm sure it's got to be really hard for her and Harry, especially growing up with the ability to defend yourself if necessary. But yeah, it seems to always do more harm than good.
Yeah, it doesn't go well. It backfires a little bit, and it did here. So one of my favorite stories from just the past couple of days, and one that's still kind of simmering out there, is this Good Morning America, Lara Spencer sort of stepping in it episode. It happened last Thursday, I believe, and we're dating ourselves because this is airing or dropping on September 6th. So it'll be a couple weeks. Anyway, it'll be 2 weeks. So it was the second to the last week of August. And she was reporting on Prince George's school day on Good Morning America. You know how she hosts that little bit of a celebrity break? Well, she was talking about he's taking math and science and history and also poetry and ballet, among other things. And she said, oh, he looks so happy about the ballet class. And Prince William said, Prince George absolutely loves ballet. And then she goes on to say, I have news for you, Prince William. We'll see how long that lasts. And there's sort of some snickering going on in the background. But it really enraged people because here's this 6-year-old little boy who, I don't care what it is he enjoys, she's kind of calling him out on something. And it just came across as really mean-spirited. And boy, did it just caused this huge fiasco for the network. I read they were thinking about suspending her.
Wow.
And then by Friday decided, no, we'll just put out an apology on social media, which she did. But then people were saying that's not enough because she spoke the words on television. She needs to apologize on TV. So this whole thing just built. I got to say, the timing was right because I think the weekend took a lot of the sting out of this for them.
Oh, yeah.
But what did you think of all this?
You know, I read an article about it first, and I read her comment in print, and I thought, oh, that's not very nice. But then I watched the video, and it was just kind of her tone of voice and everyone laughing in the background that just made it feel really, really mean. I mean, here's this 6-year-old boy. Who cares what he enjoys doing? If he likes to dance, great. And it sounds like it's part of the curriculum. All of the students do this. But it doesn't matter. Let him enjoy what he wants to do. Why do you care?
He's 6 years old.
Right.
I mean, I totally agree. So, you know, some people even accused her of bullying. And so on Friday, she wrote an apology on her Instagram saying her comments were insensitive. And then I'm going to read what she said on the air. I didn't hear her speak the words, but this is what she said. I screwed up. I did. The comment I made about dance was insensitive. It was stupid, and I am deeply sorry. I've spoken with several members of the dance community over the past few days. I have listened. I've learned about the bravery it takes for a young boy to pursue a career in dance. I wonder if she ever imagined that by speaking those words, she was really triggering so many emotions in so many people that go back to their childhood when they were criticized for doing something that wasn't either a gender norm or something that wasn't considered what a person should be doing. And I think it was really a good teaching moment for everybody. So, you know, because I'm on TV a lot, I think, would that have ever happened to me? I like to say no because I feel like I'm kind of an open person, but it does make you think about how all of the conditioning that you bring to your job impacts what you do. And I think that's what happened to her here. She's trying to be hip. She's trying to be funny. She thought it would be funny, and it just was the exact opposite.
Yeah, I don't think she anticipated anything like this happening. I mean, just watching her say it on air, yeah, you're right. She thought she was being funny, and it was just like this really casual comment, and
and she has kids. That's the other thing that I think is interesting. Yes, she's a mom, and this touched such a nerve in the dance community. I don't know if you saw any of this, but 2 days after this all happened on Good Morning America, the day Lara did her on-air apology, hundreds of dancers, male dancers mainly, showed up outside the studios of Good Morning America just to dance and to make the statement that I was that little boy you called out. I was the little boy who loved to dance, who people teased, who people bullied, and they all started dancing. And there were women there too, but they were in their, leotards and everything, and they were making a statement. It gives me kind of goosebumps because I think that's how deep this gender shaming goes. And wow, we all really need to work on that, on just being more open to whatever people want to do and that being okay.
And being kind to people, especially children.
Right, exactly. A little boy, a little 6-year-old boy. Again, I thought Buckingham Palace was impeccable in just not responding.
Yeah.
And, hopefully he'll read about it if he does in a time when he either has help in framing it or is secure enough in his own sense of self that it won't bother him and he'll think, well, shame on her. Because it really was. It's really shows her mean-spiritedness. And I like that show. I can't say I'm a huge Lara Spencer fan, but the fact that this all happened probably just makes me go, yuck. How I feel.
Me too.
Going forward. So then I ran across this other little item about the royal family. I love this. Have we talked about this before, by the way?
I don't know.
I feel like we
may have discussed it amongst ourselves. I don't know that we've talked about it on the podcast.
Well, it's this whole thing about the royal family using WhatsApp to communicate with one another. And we're not just talking about anything. They use it to sort of plan their family gatherings, and they'll decide, are you bringing the kids to this, or is this just an adults only thing? And they do it all on WhatsApp. I think it's great.
I love that. It just shows how, normal they are. And I was thinking about the whole dynamic of the monarchy, because I can't imagine this happening in the 70s or the 80s or, even before that. But I think it kind of started with Princess Diana and maybe Princess Anne, who, declined the titles for Tsar and Peter. And they both had the goal of raising their children as normal as possible. And I think that just kind of was ingrained in them. So now they're adults. Of course they use WhatsApp to plan. I just kind of always assumed they probably have people that work out those details for them.
Right.
Just plan it yourself.
Do they even have a private secretary anymore? Right. Because aren't those the people that used to do it? Like your secretary would handle all the details?
And all the coordination.
Yeah. And I love the way this came to light. So Zara Tyndall's husband, Mike Tyndall, was on Good Morning Britain, and they were asking about how the royal family communicates, and he's just like, we're like everybody else, So I was wondering, are the people at WhatsApp totally reevaluating their security now that they know the royal family's using this? We better make sure this is all buttoned up and, we're not going to get stung.
Well, WhatsApp is owned by Facebook, so that's interesting, I think. But it's supposed to be way more secure than just regular text messaging. But then also WhatsApp is way more popular all over the world, more so than it is here.
Right. Well, it's because you can text, but you don't you don't spend a ton on data. So, my stepdaughter lives in London, so we always WhatsApp because it's
cheaper.
Zero cost. Right, exactly, instead of just regular texting. It works really well. I mean, it feels just like texting. You can send photos and everything else. I love that about the royal family.
So do I.
They are just like us, Brandie.
They are. And I loved his quote at the end. I don't think this is a new revelation. He was so confused as to why people thought it was interesting.
Well, we want to know all those things.
Absolutely.
And that's why you'll always hear about them here on Royal Dish.
That's all the time we have today. Another reminder that if you liked what you heard, subscribe to Royal Dish wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to leave us a review. You can follow us on Twitter at Royal Dish Pod, and if you have a question or a topic you'd like for us to discuss, tweet us or email us at podcasts@ksdk.com. Thanks for listening.